Okay, on today's episode, I'm speaking with Yvan Petit. Yvan is the longtime touring guitarist with country musician Johnny Reid. He's also a studio owner, engineer, singer, songwriter. He's got an instrumental album out there called Telefang, which I highly recommend. And he's currently working on his next full-length record. You can check out his music and everything else at yvanpetitmusic.com. All right, let's get into it. This was a great chat. We covered a lot of ground. I'm excited to share it with you. Here's my interview with Yvan Petit. All right, thanks a lot for coming on the show today, Yvan. I appreciate you giving me some of your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
Wouldn't mind just maybe for my listeners, if we could step back and think about how you first got into the business. Maybe we can start at when you decided to go to audio engineering school.
Sure. So that was a basic choice. Like I remember being at school and you remember basically all the colleges would come into your school and kind of have an expose to figure out what you want to do. So I remember that happening in our school, and I remember going for AC, the AC work and all that kind of stuff. And I remember my parents saying, "Are you kidding me? Like, that you'll have to play with or work with ducks and stuff like that. And you might cut your fingers as a guitar player. Are you sure this is really what you want?" Right. So I really had to really figure it out. And I remember somebody mentioning, hey, there is a recording engineer school that you could probably attend to if that's something you like. You seem to be doing a lot of recording at home. And I was like, yeah, I do. My father had bought a little 4-track Tascam machine so that we could record at home. And I really got interested in that kind of venue of the music. Right. So that side of the music. And then, so I just decided, okay, well, if there's a school like that, I might as well go. So I started looking around. I saw that in Toronto, there was a school called Trebas Institute of Music. So there was one there, but there was a little private school here in Ottawa, and it was called TERA, or the Audio Recording Academy. So that's when I decided, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to apply there. The tuition fees were pretty expensive, even for 1997. It was about 15 grand for 1 year to go to the school. So I remember my parents saying, you know what, we're going to pay this, and this is going to be the last thing we pay for you. After this, you're on your own. And I was like, okay, that's a good deal to me. So 97 to 98, I went to that recording school, and to just to situate you a little bit, I was very French. I'm still very French, but the point is I was to the point where I had a very hard time to follow at school. I remember the first couple of months, it was very tough for me. Nobody was French in the school. So it was literally, I had to kind of try my best to pay attention and to follow along as they went. So it took me a few months, but in the sense of I was always at the school. So we had to do about, if I'm not mistaken, it's 8 hours a week by yourself in the school. It might have been 4 hours, whatever the thing was. You had to do a certain amount of hours per week by yourself. And I remember calling in all the time. Sometimes I would do 16 hours in 1 week by myself, right? So I would just call in, hey, is there anybody at the school? No, actually, the person canceled. You can come in if you want to use the studio. So I remember doing all my hours halfway through the school year. I was already done by hours that I was supposed to actually do. So I was always at the studio, and to the point where the owner of the studio started really relying on me for even sessions that was going through. He's like, hey, I have a country session. You're the country guy. Do you want to take the session and help out Mark, which was his son that was doing the engineer stuff? So I would go in and help Mark to do all the engineering stuff for all the country bands that would come in, since I was specialized in country music. So that's where it all started in there. And I really got my feet wet, and I got to meet a few people around the studio that were coming to do certain of those sessions, like a steel guitar player named Danny Loyer. He was a very big guy on the Quebec side. He would do all the big band stuff, and he was one of the best steel players then. And so I got to meet him in the studio. So I started really getting all the phone numbers down, and really getting myself accustomed to all these players that were around, because I knew at some point I wanted to definitely get into a band situation, right? So I was new here, so I didn't know anybody. So that was my approach. I was like, I need to get these numbers so that I can start knowing these people and hopefully get a band thing going at some point. So that was the school thing. So yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned a few things there that I found pretty interesting. One thing, you mentioned your father had a 4-track. You mentioned obviously you had supportive parents because they paid for your school, right, and said maybe this is the right path as opposed to being like an AC tech. So what was it like growing up in a supportive family like that?
Well, to even like I actually started very young, right? So my father always had a band as I was growing up. I remember there's pictures of me as a kid and my dad's playing guitar. So he always had a band, and it was a family band as well. So it was like uncles on the bass, on the drums, and aunt singing backup vocals, and so it was really a family thing. And at the age of 4 years old, yes, it was 4 years old. My aunt was actually going to like a soirée d'amateur, it's called in French. It's amateurs night of some sort. And a lot of acts were doing some songs. So I remember my mom driving my aunt, and I was in the car, and she was just about to get dropped off. And I turned to my aunt and I said, "Hey, I want to go in with you." She's like, "Well, the only way that you can go in is if you come and sing with me." And apparently I said, "Well, I'm going to go sing." I was 4 years old. So my aunt looked at my mom, and my mom's like, "Well, bring him in and see what he does." So apparently I went on stage. My aunt was like, "Okay, do you want me to stay with you?" And apparently I said, "No, you can get off stage, my tante. I'm okay by myself." And I started singing a song. So they added me to the show. So that same night I did the amateur night, my very first performance at the age of 4 years old. And I never stopped since. I literally just started practicing ever since. I remember in our living room, there was a bunch of mirrors. So I would get on the top of the table with a comb, and I would actually like pretend I was a singer and do all the moves and all that kind of stuff and practice myself. So anyways, fast forward a little bit to the age of 9 years old, and that same aunt, which her name was Sylvie, she was getting married. And she was marrying one of the bartenders of one of the bars my father was playing all the time. So my father asked, he's like, "Hey," or my aunt asked my dad, "Hey, is it possible that Ivan sings a song at the wedding?" It was like a wedding song thing. So anyways, I sang the song. The bar owner was actually at the wedding. So he approached my father and he's like, "Hey, is there any way you can bring your son to the bar for a one night thing? We're just going to see what happens, He's like, "He's a good little singer. So maybe it would attract some people." It seemed to be a very dead time at the bars at that moment. So he's like, "Let's just try it out." So my dad was like, "Well, let me approach my wife and let's make sure that my wife agrees with this, and I'll get back to you." So I guess they approached me and said, "Hey, is this something you want to do?" Apparently I said yes. So my father was like, "Okay, well, you know what? Let's wait till his birthday was November 27th. So November 27th, the very next day, my dad had a gig. So it was a Friday night. So he said, "Okay, let's debut him on November 28th, 1986. So I went to the bar. The bar got packed. Everybody wanted to know who's this 10-year-old kid that's going to be performing there tonight. So the bar got packed, and then after that, the snowball started happening as far as like all the bars starting call my dad saying, "Hey, we need your kid at our bar." So my dad was very busy. So I would play about 3 weekends a month from the age of 10 years old till I was 21 with my father. So.
Wow. And is this in Northern Ontario? Is that where
Northern
you grew
Ontario.
up? Okay.
Yeah. So it was mostly in Timmins, Ontario, the bars that we were playing.
Timmins. Okay. Cool. Where Shania Twain's from?
Shania Twain was,
right.
yeah. She was doing the same circuits, right? So she was
okay.
doing I met her once actually at one of the bars, and that was it, just before she was somebody, I guess. So
Okay. That's really
my uncle's at school with her. So.
Oh, nice. Okay. That's really cool. Another awesome artist from Timmins is Lights. I don't know if you know that. She's like a pop artist, Lights.
No.
Anyway,
don't know
just
the
a
name.
total aside. So if you think back to when you were 10 and this snowball started to happen, can you like remember how that made you feel, or like the psychology behind that? Like, did you ever think back to that?
A little bit, but the only thing that really sticks is the whole alcohol thing, because I'm not a drinker, right?
Okay.
But I remember the reason, and it's because all these drunk people in the bar would come and talk to me, and the smell that it would give,
Yeah.
I just hated that. And ever since, I just never turned to alcohol. I tried, and that smell was always stuck in my head. So I never became a drinker because of the fact. So that's one thing that stuck with me. Other than that, I can't really tell you the truth. It was just I was just a kid, right? So it was like, to me, it was a normal thing.
Yeah.
I know it's not, but in my case, it just felt like it was a normal, like everybody must be doing this. But I was the only one.
That's why it's interesting. It's a unique position to be in. And did you notice like the adults, their attitude changing as like they drank alcohol? Like, I don't know, you probably couldn't connect the two, but
I couldn't connect that. No, I really couldn't. No.
Okay.
Another one thing that kind of stuck to me, I remember too, is one time we were at a bar in Timmins called the Windsor Tavern. And it was an afternoon gig because we used to do the whole thing was Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, 3 to 6, and then nighttime 9 to 1 or 2 o'clock. And then we do a Sunday afternoon as well. So from 3 to 5, I believe, or 3 to 6. 3 to 7. It was an extra hour than the one before. Anyways, point being is I remember the Sunday I was sitting in the bar and my father was on stage. So I wasn't playing guitar at that point. I really just was going up and I would come down and just go sit back at a table, and people would bring me chips and pop and pickled eggs, and that's what I would do during my breaks. So I remember my father being on stage and cops coming in. I guess some guy made a complaint that there's a kid in this bar. So about 7 cops came. They came into the bar and they saw me. They surrounded me. So my father's seeing that. He's like, hey, he stopped the song. And he's like, hey, this is my son. And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, he's here to play. So they're like, well, can you prove it? So my father was like, yeah, come on, Ivan, get on stage and sing a song. So I sang a song. So the cops were like, okay, yeah, it is true that he is, but he cannot stay in the bar because he's not of age. So you'll have to try to figure out another thing. So they brought me in a little office in the back. So every bar had a little office where they would do their accounting and all that kind of stuff. So they would put me in that office. And after a couple of months, I was bored, right? I was like, man, this is boring. So my father was like, well, you know what? You're starting to play guitar at home. I know you're not very good, but you might as well just get on stage, put your amp at 0, make sure the amp is off, but just play along, just watch us play, and you'll probably get accustomed and start to learn a few things of the way we're doing this. So I did that exactly thing. So we got on stage, and after my set, basically my father was like, you know what, instead of going in the little office and now, just go in the back of the drums and just sit there for the little 20-minute break that we have, and then you get back on stage with the guitar. So that's how I kind of started getting to be a guitar player. And I also was right next to the lead guitar player. So I would watch him a lot and I would just pick up his licks. So and we had 3 different lead guitar players that in that kind of span of time. And I picked up a lot of stuff along that way. And there was a kind of a story that one of our lead guitar players was pretty drunk on stage, which was the last guitar player we had, and he fell off stage. He actually fell asleep and fell off stage. So my father was like, that's it, I am done. And he turned to me, he's like, you're the lead player now. And I'm like, well, Dad, I don't even know how to play lead guitar. He's like, I've been watching all these guitar players. I knew you can do it. Just get home and practice. So that's exactly what I did. I was very newbie, but I had a few licks here and there. And my father was like, you know what? Some of those bars, they're dives. There's nobody in there. Or if there is, they're there to drink. They're not there to really listen to the music. Just play whatever you want. I don't care if you make errors. He's like, this is the way that you're going to learn. So he really gave me that platform to be able to really try different things, right? Without being scared that, oh no, these people are going to hear my mistakes. My father didn't care. So, and that really gave me a good way to learn and to know what to do and what not to do as a guitar player. So
that's really interesting. Do you remember when you're developing your playing, of course, but can you remember if your ear was developing as well? As you started to learn the chord progressions and.
Yeah, because as a kid, just vocal wise, right? I had a way to do that. So I guess it translated to the guitar pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And I would practice a lot. My mom and dad said that pretty much probably a couple hours a day, every day I would practice.
Okay.
Until I got to college. College really ramped it up. Mm-hmm. You know, I would play 6 hours a day through college. Nothing else to do, right? No money. So what else do you do? Well, you stay at home and you practice, try to figure out if I can do this as a living. So that's kind of what I did. And it really paid off. Obviously, as soon as after I graduated school, I'll situate you with that. So back at school, right at the end of my program, I remember there was a paper that they had called the Express. It was like a music publication thing that they would support. And there was a classified section where they would be classifieds about the musician stuff. And I remember seeing an ad saying a country lead guitar player needed, a band from Ottawa, and vocal and asset, if you can sing, a lot better, obviously. So I called and I was like, hey, I'm a guitar player. I'm new in the area. I don't know anybody. I was like, I knew a few people from school, but they were a little too high up in the chain as far as like where they were playing. I needed a new band. So anyways, I called that number. I remember her name was Julie. Can't remember the last name, Julie something. And she's like, do you have a vehicle? I was like, unfortunately, no, I don't have a vehicle. She's like, okay, I'll pick you up. We'll go to the rehearsal. So we did the first rehearsal. Actually, to tell you the truth, I think we did 3 rehearsals. And I remember that it wasn't really going anywhere. They were just rehearsing. I wanted to play the bars. They just wanted to rehearse. And I was like, this is not my thing, man. I really want to get into the bars. It's okay to rehearse, but I've been rehearsing for the past 15 years. I'm ready for the bar stuff. So the drummer seen that I was a little antsy, put me on the side. He's like, hey, dude, I have another band and we're already in the bar scenes. He's like, you're a pretty good little guitar player and we're looking for second lead guitar players. There any chance that you want to join? So I was like, actually, I would. He's like, well, come to the tryouts of the trial and we'll see if the singer thinks you're a good guitar player. I went to the rehearsal, did 2 songs, and he turned. He's like, you're in. I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, you're the guitar player we've been looking for. So I did a year with these guys, and then that really implemented. So I started meeting other guys, and we did Canada Day in Almont, Ontario, which is about is it an hour? Well, let's say about an hour from here. I went to do Canada Day and there were 6 bands there. And they were all local bands. So that's where I really met all these guys and got cards and I get my cards to them. And then I got a call from this one guy, or Rock LaFleur, saying, hey, we need a guitar player. And that really started the whole snowball in Ottawa. So that really, So for a while I was playing with 17 bands in the Ottawa area.
Whoa, 17. That's wild.
17 bands. So and not just myself. So when I say band, I should specify more like singers. So it was me, the bass player, and the drummer that we were doing all these 17 different acts. So,
okay, so you were like the prolific backing band for a bunch of singers.
Backup band. So, and it sparked from the Johnny Reid thing. So I met Johnny in 1999.
Yep.
And that's kind of where. Well, I'll explain a little more. So I met him, and then for about a year, we used to do a lot of little shows down here. And then he decided, he's like, guys, I'm actually going to move to Nashville. So I'm going to leave the band for a little bit, but don't worry. We're going to do this, but we need to up this thing. So he's like, I need to be in Nashville, try to get signed by a label, and then this thing should take off. So he left, and it was me, the drummer and the bass player of the Johnny Reid band, decided, hey, let's try to get busy. And everybody was like, oh, you're with the Johnny Reid? Yeah, let's get you. So that's why we were kind of busy. Everybody was like, oh, that's the Johnny Reid band. We should just hire him. So that's kind of how we got to do that. And then he got signed, and then the whole thing started really ramping up. So
were you at all nervous when he went off to Nashville, thinking that maybe like left behind isn't the right way to put it, but maybe it is? Like, did you worry about that? No, because in that moment, it really was just the first year that I was with him, right? And to tell you the truth, at that moment, it was more like, okay, I'll join this band, but I really want to be a singer. So this is going to be a meantime thing, right? So that's kind of what I had in my head. I never thought that I would last 26 years playing for him, but still, at that moment, it was just in the meantime thing. So I was like, when he left, I was like, well, either he comes back or I find something else and I go forward with this, right? Because he really was just a guy off from university, so nobody really knew who he was. He was literally in UB as well. So no, I never really thought the whole scared of like, is he going to come back? Because I didn't really know him that much yet. So yeah. Okay. You touched on a couple of things too. I wouldn't mind honing in on, you mentioned like going to school and putting in extra hours. You find yourself working on sessions at the school through the studio owner. You're playing all these gigs. I'm curious if you could talk about how attitude and that sort of, I'm imagine you're a pretty positive person. You're outgoing. How does that affect someone's career trajectory, especially in the beginning stages like that?
Yeah, big time. Actually, not even just the beginning. It affects the whole thing. Like I would say you have to be a good hang. That's the very first thing. You can be the best player in the world, but if you're not a good hang and you're not somebody that they can be around with at all levels, and I explain what I mean by that in a few minutes, but you have to be a good hang. You definitely have. That's the very first thing. You do have to have talent, don't get me wrong, but that's secondary to be a good hang, especially if you're at that level of, now I'm going a little forward, but like as far as like in a tour bus, right? Once you're in a tour bus and you're living with these people, that's where it really shows you who's a good hang and who's not, right? And even you have to be somebody that picks up himself after himself, you know, like if you're somebody that leaves everything out and you do not pick up after yourself, it's going to be hard to be in a bus with everybody because everybody's going to yell at you and, you know, things. We had a guy that would eat sardines in his bunk. Not a good thing, you know. Everybody was like, come on, dude, you don't need to eat sardines in the bunk and you're stinking up the whole bus, right? So anyways, little things. I know it's details, but even like going to the washroom and not picking yourself up, right? And then we had a few guys like that where we had to be like, come on, dude, like we have to use the washroom after you, right? I know it's a little gross, but you know what I mean? So being able to be somebody that they can live with at all time is a big thing.
Well,
so that's,
yeah, I mean, everyone, I'm sure lots of listeners and lots of folks assume the touring life is glamorous, right? It's really easy to imagine it being glamorous, but you're kind of only working 1 or 2 hours a day on the stage, and the rest of the time you're stuck in this small box with a bunch of other, usually men. Like you're usually stuck with these other people.
And the only time you have privacy is when you're in your bunk and you close that little curtain. That's it. That's your little moment of privacy. But other than that, there's at least 10 people on the bus at all times, right? I mean, when I say that, obviously the some of the tours were a little bigger where there was about 52 of us, like with the crew and everybody. So then we have 3 or 4 buses. It all depends on that kind of thing. So then it's all split up. We have the quiet bus, which is Johnny's bus, the band bus, that's the rowdy bus, and then we have the crew bus. So that's usually how they split it up. So I'm one of the quiet guys, as I tell you, I don't drink, so I'm on the Johnny bus since I'm not one of the drinkers. Okay. Johnny's not much of a drinker, so he likes quietness in his bus. So I've been upgraded to the quiet bus. So
okay, if we could keep on attitude just for a little bit longer, because I was just kind of curious if you have seen people come into that world with the wrong attitude, but they've managed to turn it around, or is it generally folks have to have the right attitude before they even get those opportunities to survive?
Yes. Yeah, they have to have that. That the attitude needs to be there first. I've never really noticed. Well, I should say that there's a few guys that came on tour. Yeah, they would never change. So no, I think you have to have it before you come in. As I'm sure it happens, but in our case, because we had a lot of different musicians come in, I'm still the only original member left, really from the start. So we had a lot of bass players going through, a lot of drummers, and it's usually the same deal. It's usually the attitude thing. And it might not be attitude in the sense of the way they are, but it might be a money attitude thing, you know, where they're going to complain about, oh, it's not enough money, he gets more, blah, blah, blah. So there was a lot of that as well. So, but to tell you the truth, yeah, you have to have a good attitude right from the start to be able to fit in and to be able to show that you're not about yourself, that you're more about the group and try to make this thing work as a group, right? So, yeah.
We don't have to go into specific details or anything, but you mentioned money and like this is such a unique opportunity for me to speak to someone like yourself who's been a gigging musician for so long and has been with an artist who reached, you know, a certain level of success that a lot of people probably kind of, you know, they would envy and they would hope to achieve themselves. And, you know, is that something you can talk about a little bit, like how the money world affects things, or like how you could make a living in that, taking that sort of path?
Right. Well, if you're just a touring musician, you definitely have to probably take more than one tour. Being with one artist, unless, well, it depends on the level of success that the artist has, right? If we're talking Shania Twain, well, it's probably a little different because of the money that she brings in on a constant, like per gig thing will be a lot more. I'll give you an example, okay? As far as like what I mean by levels. So we were doing the tour with Martina McBride, right? So we did the tour with Martina McBride, and one night whoever's in charge of the checks gave Johnny the wrong check and gave Martina McBride's check. So I remember Johnny's like, Petit, come here, you got to see this. And I was like, what's up? He's like, you got to see this check. So he showed me the check. So that check for one night for Martina McBride, now take into account that that's for her whole entourage and everything that relates to that one show, but it was a $1.5 million check. That was for one show. So you can just imagine. I remember us guys going through saying, hey, let's calculate how much you think about she will take out of that pile. And we figured at least $300,000 was for her to bring in her account. So if you think that, and I believe we did 12 shows in Canada with her. So at 300,000, 12 times, she made a lot of money. What, 3.6 million probably just for the shows that she did. Anyways, so that's in that sense. So the musicians in those situations probably make a little more than the Canadian musicians and the Canadian acts that tour, right? So in this case, I would say that these guys probably make an easier living if they only have one act to tour with, right? In this sense, they could. I'll give you an example. I don't know exactly how much Shania Twain's guys make, but I know at the end of a tour, they're told, okay, pick a place and I'm sending you there for 2 weeks, everything paid. So this is your bonus thing. You get a trip somewhere for 2 weeks, all inclusive paid for. So anyways, so there's things like that can happen. If you're a Canadian touring act, I would say, like I just said, you probably need more than one, or you need different sources to be able to make sure you get enough for the year, right? Because for one tour, I would say you probably, unless it's a 50 show tour, or maybe even more than that, you could probably make, well, let's say you make about, between you and me, about that, well, it's you and me and everybody on the internet. But anyways, let's say you make about $1,000 a show. So if you do 50 shows, you still make 50 grand. But 50 grand these days doesn't go as far as you think, right? Or as you know, I should say. So you definitely have to have other sources. Like in my case, I would also teach guitar, be a guitar teacher, right? Do other little gigs in the meantime. There's obviously internet. You can do videos on YouTube and get paid for these kind of things. So I would say you definitely need more than one source as a full-time musician. Okay. Unless you're lucky and you get that one gig or you get that one song, right? We never really talked about the songwriting thing, but if you're a songwriter, that's where the money is. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that next, actually, but I just wanted to just mention that hearing you say, you can make 50 grand a year, to me, that's like kind of inspiring, because a lot of folks who are musicians, they might have a day job in a different industry, and that's what they're making, 50 grand a year.
Right, no, right, exactly.
So it's, to me, and any listener out there, especially younger listeners, like 50 grand a year, if you're going to make a middle class wage anyway, you can make that in music. So why not give it a shot?
But you have to be willing to be on tour a long time, right? And not be home. So if you have a family, it's a little different. Like in my case now that I have a 4-year-old son that's about to turn 5, it's not as easy to leave for long periods of time. Even for a couple of weeks, it's very hard now. So that's kind of what made me, try to navigate this a little differently in this case, like do a little less of the touring part and do a lot more local stuff. So I'm in that transition period now just because I have a kid. Gotcha. So, but again, I still lasted 26 years. I've been with Johnny doing this touring thing. So we definitely did a lot in that 26 years. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I don't even remember that we did probably. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. So, but a lot of good experiences for sure. That if I can take something out of that is that the money is not really the whole thing. It was definitely the experiences I've got of all this stuff. Being able to just go everywhere in the world, right? To see different things from Nunavut to Switzerland to Australia to, everywhere. So we definitely did a lot of traveling. So I definitely have a lot of bucket list stuff that I was able to take off my list. So yeah. That's great. So that's probably more important. Of course, being, having bucket loads of money would be nice too. But I'm sure, but it comes with problems. I gotta tell you, and I see it on every level. Especially once Johnny got a very up the chain kind of thing, you can start to see a lot of stuff that changes as far as like you're not able to go everywhere that you want to go without being hounded at least anyways. If you don't mind that, and at first I think he was like, I don't mind that, but he started seeing very fast that, wow, okay, this is very demanding because people are just around you and you don't have time for yourself because they're literally always around you. They Johnny Reid. And then they would come, hey, can I take a picture? And then they start talking. And then first thing you know, his meal is cold because he hadn't time to, little things. I know it's very minimal, these things, but I could tell that after a while, he started to be to the point where he had to seclude himself and just stay in his room because there's just no time for him, or no time for him to be just alone and by himself other than when he's in his room. So the money comes with different things. We got to experience all that without the money and without the fame part. So that's what the part I kind of liked, because I was able to experience all that without the weirdness coming with it. So, and there's more stories I'm not going to share, obviously, but like weird things that have happened, like death and all that kind of stuff that, I was like, you know what, imagine even being at a higher level, it must be even worse. So you're carrying your...
I imagine people try to get in your orbit when you're at a certain level of success who you don't necessarily want around you because their intentions might be a little nefarious or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, but to come back to the experiences, that's what definitely is the gold to me.
Yeah.
Is all the experiences that I'll never forget that a lot of people would kill to do, and I got to do them for free. Actually, I got to get paid to do all these things, actually. Yeah. So it was really cool.
Yeah, maybe we can focus or shift over to songwriting, because that's also kind of a mysterious word. I'm in New Brunswick, right? So obviously it's a small province, small scene. Interesting bilingual scene. That's another thing I was hoping we could touch on later. But the songwriting thing is so fascinating to a lot of people. You hear about people getting points on tunes, or you hear about, how do you divide the songwriting credits? Is it really the top line that gets all the majority of the share? Then you register them with SOCAM, but then you got ASCAP and BMI. There's so many things we could talk about that seems like a mystery to a lot of younger and newer musicians. Maybe I'll just throw that at you, and you can kind of just like tell me what you think about it all.
Yeah, sure. Well, as far as like how it works a little bit, now I'm not like a professional, and as far as like I don't know all the ins and outs, but in the sense of I've been told a lot that whoever's in the room while the song is being written gets the fair share of the song. He doesn't even have to say one line in the song. If he was in the room, he gets credited with the song. So if 3 guys are there, you get 33.333% each. Okay. If there's 2 guys, you get 50% each. Now, when you get your 50%, if that person that has that 50% has a publishing deal as well, he might have to give that 25% of his 50 to the publisher as well. So there's different deals like that happens for sure. But as far as like the songwriting itself, like I said, that's where the money is, right? Now, when you get, I believe it's the same as it used to be for the radio spins. And I believe it's 0.07 cents that you get or 7 cents? No, it's 7 cents per spin, right? Which doesn't look like there's a lot of money there, but 7 cents a spins is still way better than the streaming thing. The streaming is 0.01 cent that you get for every spin that you get for a stream. Anyways, back to the radio thing, or the songwriting thing. You can really make a living with just one song. And I'll give you an example. So I was in Nashville, and I remember Johnny's like, hey, I set you up for a writing session today. His name is Eddie Schwartz. I was like, okay, cool. I'll go and write with Eddie Schwartz. So we sat down and we do a bunch of writing, and it's close to noon. So we take a break. He's like, hey, there's a little sub shop close. You want to go and grab a bite to eat? I was like, yeah, sure. So let's go there. So anyways, we're sitting down, and obviously I don't know this guy. So I'm like, what am I going to ask him? What am I going to talk about? So first question I'm asking, I'm like, hey, Eddie, can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah, sure. I was like, did you ever have a hit? Like, you've been a songwriter here in Nashville for a while. Did you have a hit? He's like, I had one hit in my life. I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, in 1976. I was like, 76? He's like, yeah. He's like, I wrote Hit Me With Your Best Shot for Pat Benatar. And I was like, whoa, are you kidding me? He's like, no. He's like, I'm serious. I wrote that song. I was like, okay. So I was like, you made a lot of money. He's like, well, I became a multimillionaire back in 76 because of that one song. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, so you haven't written anything since? He's like, no. I was like, so do you have to work? He's like, well, to tell you the truth, my song still gets played all the time. He's like, sometimes it gets in movies. So he's like, you know what? Every year I can expect at least, back then, that was about 10, 15 years ago, what I'm talking about. And he said he gets at least $50,000 to $75,000 a year just for that song every year. So he's like, I don't have to work. He's like, I made my millions, but he's like, I'm still making a lot of money on that one song that I did 20 or what, and now it's 50 years ago. I guess now today it would be 50 years ago. So just to tell, it's obviously the money's there. So if you're a songwriter, you can do a lot of money. I'll give you another example of another dude that I wrote a song. His last name was it Leslie? Can't remember. Chris Lindsley or Leslie, something like that. And they, same deal. No, take a break. And it was with Johnny at that point. But I asked him the same question. And I said, do you have a hit? He's like, yes. He's like, a couple of years ago, he's like, I'm one of the writers that wrote Amazed for Lone Star. Baby, I'm amazed by you. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a big hit. I was like, okay, the ultimate question, how much money did you make? He's like, I don't like to talk money. So he's like, I won't tell you up to now. He's like, because we crossed over to pop radio. He's like, so it's obviously more. He's like, but I'll give you the first year. He's like, the first year, us 3 writers, we made, the song generated $12 million for the writers. So we made $4 million each on country radio. That's before pop radio. Mm-hmm. It's like, you can imagine. Yeah. I was like, wow. Anyways, so you can imagine as well how much money there is to make as a songwriter. So yeah, you need one hit.
It's fun to think about, but also I'm a little worried I'm focusing too much on the negatives, but I think it's important to think these things through. Is that kind of illustrates the importance of making sure you don't sign away your publishing, or like fully sign away your publishing, yes. Or you make sure if you're in the room when a song is written, you make sure that you take care of your side of the business to make sure that if something happens and this hit takes off, you're credited the way you should be credited.
Right. Yeah, that's why SOCAN exists, right? To make sure that you get all your works registered and that nothing like that would ever happen. I'm sure it still happens, but sure, yeah. At least you're covered to the point where SOCAN has your rights, and they would probably fight for you if they already own the song, right? Or not own, but if it's registered through their company. So, sure. Okay. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, you definitely have to be on top of that if you don't want to get quote unquote screwed, right? So yeah. I'm just thinking like in a beginning stage of a career, you might not take that quite as seriously, but then you might miss an opportunity. So obviously, like going around and getting in these different rooms for songwriting sessions, not only does it give you more opportunities to be on an important song or a popular song, but it also obviously would a good lesson in terms of developing your songwriting skills. You'd see all these different flavors and approaches. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, these guys in Nashville are insane. When you sit down with them and write, you're like, wow, like these guys really have it together. They just have all. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, is there anything like any common approaches you see, or any common threads between the different songwriters that everyone seems to do? They all have like these kind of dictionaries, like synonyms, dictionaries, and all these kind of things that they rely on just to make sure that they have all the right rhymes and that they or access to all the rhymes that they need. So yeah, so these kind of things really did happen to when I see nowadays. It's a little different because we can do it on our iPads or our phones, right? So you can add their apps for that. But back then I saw that they would write down all this kind of stuff and make sure that they're ready that way, and then have all the synonyms all ready and all their ideas on paper, so that if they, maybe sometimes it would just be all titles that they had on a piece of paper. Here's a bunch of titles I came up with. So they would definitely come prepared. Okay. It wasn't really like just off of the cuff things. They were always prepared with an idea, and it might just be a guitar idea, and it might be just a hook. Just the hook itself, say, hey, this is a cool hook. We need to write a song on this. And like I said, they would have all these synonym things and anonyms or whatever the other stuff is. But so it's kind of a blend. Sounds like it's a blend of inspiration and also work ethic. Yeah, absolutely. And then you bring the idea to a table with other writers that have the same type of thing. And then, the brainstorming starts, and then things just happen. And sometimes it takes a while, right? As you probably know, as a songwriter, sometimes you can write a song in 15 minutes. You're like, whoa, this song was written in 15 minutes. And some other songs, it takes you 2 weeks. Yep. You work at it every day and you're like, man, it just doesn't work, right? And sometimes you'll bring it to another guy and he has that one line that you're like, this is it. Good thing I brought it to you. It's that one line that I needed, right? So sometimes it happens that way organically, or in the sense where you bring a almost finished song that you just can't finish, and somebody will help you finish it. So yeah, and I did that with Johnny a few times, where there's a few songs that I almost had the whole thing written, and I was like, man, I'm stuck. And Johnny would say, what about this? I'm like, how did I not think about it? That's a perfect line, right? So yeah, and Johnny's so good at that. I got to tell you, he's the best I've ever seen at it. Yeah, he gets those intuitions, those feelings. Yeah, he's just so good at songwriting. He's just like, it's just inside. It oozes out of him. It's just like, he starts writing and he's got all these ideas. I'm like, how do you do that, Johnny? To him, he's like, well, Ivan, when you get on a guitar and you're able to do all these things, I'm the same with songwriting. He's like, I can just play with this. And I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. I don't get it in the sense that I can't do it, but I get what you're saying because I can do that on guitar. So just jam.
That's interesting. So, Nashville kind of has its own charting system, doesn't it?
The Nashville number system, yeah.
The number system. Okay. Do you mind just touching on that for anyone who's listening?
Sure. Yeah. So we basically, well, when I say we, I don't live there anymore, but I did live there for a few months. But anyways, the way that the chart thing works, it's with numbers. So you assign numbers to the chords. So in the sense, like if the song's in the key of C, then your C becomes your first or your root chord in this sense, but it becomes the one. So that, and then you just put the chords accordingly to that. So if C is 1, then D is 2, 3 is E, and so on. So that's the way it does, because it's an easier system to switch chords if you have to do it on the fly. Let's say a singer comes in and he's like, whoa, this song is too low for me. We needed to do it in a different key. If you have 7 keys in the song, it's a little harder to kind of, okay, which one is which one in another key. If you have a number system behind it, once you know how it works, it's very easy to just switch it because the numbers don't switch. If the song, and if you want to switch the song from C to A, now A becomes your 1 and everything goes accordingly to that. So that's kind of like, it's a short way to say basically how the system works, but it is a number system.
Okay.
So you get a chart and it's all numbers, 1, 4, 5, 2 minors and all that kind of stuff. And then you just,
Instead of instead of the chord chart showing you like C, the actual triad notes, it just says the numbers. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And the way it works is your chord 1, your chord 4, and your chord 5. Those are your major chord. Then the 2, 3, and 6 are your minor chords in a pattern. So if you know that, it leaves your 7th, but a 7th is a diminished chord if you get advanced in the music theory. And most people, jazz people, will use the diminished chords a lot, but in country, we don't use it that much. So usually when I teach people like the system and how to do the chords with it, I'll show them the number 1 to 6, knowing that 1, 4, 5 is major, 2, 3, 6 is the minor chords. Okay. So in the progression of G is your first. I'll go with A, so it's easy to understand. You go with the first one. So A is your 1. So A, and then B, C, D, and E are your 4, 5. So that means A, D, E are your major chords. And then B minor, C minor, and the F minor in this case, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. Yeah, it would be F sharp, but that's not the point of it all. It's still the chord itself is a minor. So 1, 3, or 1, 4, 5 major, 2, 3, 6 minor. And it's a very good system to understand as well, because then you can listen to anything on the radio and most of the songs follow that structure. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be broken, the structure, because it's like anything else. You can break the rules, right? So you can break the rules in that sense. Beatles did that a lot. They would go on the 2, which is usually a minor chord, and they make it a major chord that gives you that Beatle-esque type of thing. So anyways, to go back to the system, so yeah, it is a Nashville number system, which makes it a lot easier once you learn it.
Okay. Is it usually implied or expected for the songs to be in 4/4, or does country ever kind of move around time signature?
No, you definitely have 6/8, 3/4, which is basically a half of a 6/8, but it's just the drummer will play it a little differently, and that's pretty much. And you got 2/4 as well, so 2/4. So that would be the basics ones. You will never get like a 5/4 or these kind of weird timings, signature things that happen. I don't know if do you know that new band called Angine de Poitrine?
Oh yeah, they're exploding. I love it. It's hilarious.
Band, very different, very weird music, but it's because microtonals. But at the same time, they play in those kind of 5/4, 7/8, and all these kind of weird time signatures. But country, no, it doesn't happen that much. You definitely will stick to the 2/4, 4/4, 3/4, and like I said, the equivalent with the 6/8. But that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, to be honest, I kind of come from like punk rock and tech heavy metal stuff, so I'm used to like Dream Theater and that sort of thing. So I'm used to hearing these odd signatures. But in country, I just wasn't sure if anyone, maybe there's progressive country out there or something where people are doing these.
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure there is. many kinds of music nowadays, right? They merge every types of music together and they come up with, well, especially now they have that shabuzi in country music, right? Which is a rapper. It sounds like rap. There's violin, fiddle in it to make it country, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a lot more like different types of music inside a country, but as far as the tempo itself, or not the tempo, but the beats, they definitely stick to 4/4/3/4 and 6/8/2/2/4 a little bit. But the weird time signatures are never to be found in country music. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Maybe we could shift briefly to talk about gear a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Besides the sound, what is it about the Fender? I would say the Telecaster specifically. What is it about that guitar that kind of draws a large portion of the players,
right,
to that instrument?
Well, country players, or do you mean like in general? Because for country, it's because of there's a bit. Let me just grab one and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically country.
Yeah, so in country, because of this back plate, that metal plate, it really gives you that twangy sound. That's what they say anyways.
Okay.
So that's kind of why they all related to the Telecaster, because of that twanginess. And it's basically the back pickup as well. If you get in the back pickup, you'll see that it gives you a really twangy sound to it.
And it's usually single coil pickup?
Single coils are probably better. You can probably, I was going to say you can probably have something twangy in every guitar. And while I'm saying that, I'm actually shooting a video series right now. I just started since I work at Long McQuaid, right? And I approached the general manager and I was like, hey, I have this idea for a video series. I was like, one of my students approached me and he said exactly what you just asked me. He's like, hey, do I need to buy myself a Tele to be able to twang? And I was like, well, and then in the moment I was like, well, you know what, dude, I don't think you need it. I was like, I believe it's in the fingers. And then that sparked the idea. I was like, I wonder if I start taking any guitars on the wall to see if they twang. Am I going to see if it twangs or if it's in the fingers for real? So then I approached a general manager, gave him the idea. He's like, yeah, you're free to use the store as you want. He's like, you can use the guitar. So the guitars, the series it's going to be called Will It Twang. So I take a Telecaster, I show what the Telecaster sounds like. And then the very first episode, I took a Dave Mustaine Flying V Gibson guitar and I started playing on it and it twangs. So I was like, okay, it's in the fingers, but I want to do a whole series. So that I grab different types of guitars and I show that, you know what, it's in the fingers. So to answer your questions, to the question itself, that a Tele is definitely more twangy, but you can definitely twang on any types of guitars.
Okay.
But yes, in the sense of a Tele definitely has the twang, but it's also it's a guitar with not lots of moving parts, right?
Okay.
So that's why a lot of guitar players will get to this type of guitar, because it's just a Strat. You have the floating bridge. So if you're trying to do things like, which are like triads, bending steel guitar type of effects, you're going to have a hard time doing on other guitars because the floating bridge will get up and you'll get all these strings go down as well. In this case, you're trying to bend one string and keep the other ones as is so that the pitch doesn't go up, but only goes up on one string. So, and his point being is that most guitars, the bridge will actually get up and you'll get a weird sound out of it, or at least all the strings will go up, which you don't want to happen. So a Tele definitely is a very sturdy, a two-piece guitar, right? It's a neck, and then you can actually take the neck off of it and replace the neck. So really it's a slab of wood with a piece of wood on top of it. So it's a harder guitar to play, very temperamental. And I've noticed that the B string on a Tele is always off. So I always have to put my B string flat on the tuner, and then I'm okay to play the whole night. Then I'm in tune everywhere, which is a little... So it's a bit temperamental, but it seems like every player just goes to the Tele. Well, Tele or Strat, right? Depending on what your style is, or Gibson, I guess I can add that one. But to point to Fender, it's definitely it's a big factor of the twanginess and the fact that, like I said, it's a working man's guitar, as they call it. So
okay, that's interesting what you mentioned about the floating bridge, because as soon as you said that, it made sense. Like if you're bending the strings on a floating bridge, that's changing the tension on the strings, right? So the bridge is going to react to that.
Exactly. And all three strings will go up or down, which just makes it weird because that's not what you want, especially with a steel guitar thing.
Yeah.
Like an actual steel guitar, right? Nothing moves. It's all pedals. So when they press the pedal, all the other strings stay put. So if you want to try to mimic that, it's better to do it on the Tele, I've noticed.
Okay. Another question I wanted to ask too. I was listening to Twang and for the last couple of days, which has a lot of wicked licks on that record. I'm a bass player first, and so I was kind of wondering. And again, I mentioned I come from like punk rock and heavy metal, so the bass playing like mimics the guitar and is really kind of like it can be really busy. But I'm kind of wondering for the bassists and the drummers listening, what do you look for in the rhythm section when you're doing a record like Twangin'?
Well, in this case, I left it up to the bass player and the drummer to tell you the truth. They're two of my best friends. And I just approached them. I just gave them a demo of like what the guitar stuff was. And I was like, whatever you guys think should go on top of this, I trust you. So literally, I wouldn't be able to tell you what they actually did, but what's on the record is up to them. I literally just said, you guys do what you need to do on these songs. So they're very professional. Like the drummer was for Johnny Reid for a long time. His name is Mark Lemieux, and bass player name is Rock Lafleur, and he's another good buddy of mine. Like we've been playing for years, so I know these guys inside out. So that's why I left it up to them because I knew they were going to do the right thing. They were going to serve the song for what it needed. So I left it up to them, and then I have a keyboard player named Stéphane Deraspe. He did the mixing and he does all the key stuff on it. Monster dude. He's just one of these talents that you're like. You know, you watch him play and you're like who is this guy? Yeah, he's just insane. Anyways, but to come back to the rhythm section, yeah, I left it up to them. Okay. I literally just wanted to do the guitar part, and I said try to serve the song to what I've done, and these guys did a wonderful job to it. So,
do the best rhythm sections just kind of do that? They serve the song without really needing much direction.
Right, exactly. And that's why I trust these guys specifically. Now, it doesn't happen with other guys that way. Sometimes you'll have to tell them, hey, I want to hear this instead. But like I said, these guys, I didn't have to do that. It's like they knew exactly what I wanted because they know me enough that they heard the song. They were like, hey, I bet you it's a halftime feel here. I was like, yes, Mark. He's like, yeah, I could hear it. I was like, it's because he knows me inside out. So because we've been touring for 20 some years right together. So because of that fact, he just knows exactly my little the little things I like and the little things I don't like is as far as like drum wise. So he knows exactly what to serve with the song or what to do with the song. So yeah. And I tell you, like the way I approached that album, as far as like the way I wrote the album, because I had never done that, right? So I was like, well, how do I do this? I want to do a guitar album, but I have no clue how to do this. So I went to all the other, like Steve Vai. I went to the other guy, almost Steve Vai there, Joe Satriani. Yeah. I went to all these guys and I listened to all these albums to figure out, they're actually doing a normal song where there's a verse, there's a chorus, there's a solo section. They just go all out and then they come back to that little section where it's always recognizable, right? So I was like, okay, I need to serve it like an actual song. So that's what I did. I went to Dream Theater. I listened to all that kind of stuff. I listened to, I'm trying to think of who else, John Petrucci. Is he the guy from Dream Theater?
He's from Dream Theater, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, I listened to his guitar albums. So that gave me a lot of different ideas how to approach mine with that. So that's how I did it. I was like, even if it's not country, I heard the stylistic of how they approach the song itself. And I did the same thing for mine. So there's a bunch of hooks that's always in the song. Mm-hmm. And then there's this section where I can just wail for a little bit and then come back to that hook.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I wrote the album.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I picked up on too, is like the guitar playing is really clean and what's the right word? Like not busy, but exciting, I guess. But also there's melodies that are kind of floating there that kind of imitate or replace or take the place of a vocal melody.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And just as a little bit of a curveball, the last tune on the record is really interesting. What's
the last one?
I can't remember the title, but it's like a darker sounding tune. That's just it's the acoustic guitar.
Oh, just acoustic. Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was like such a nice, interesting way to end the record. It was kind of like a palate cleanser a little bit.
right. Because it was so different too.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what to finish it with. That was just came out of the blue because I had 9 songs. And I was like, what should I do? And I was like, and then my wife's like, oh, I like that little riff you always do on your acoustic guitar. It's very dark. I was like, oh, true enough. Like, yeah, I'll just add that. I was like, I could just probably do a few times the riff and it'll kind of like, finish the album on an acoustic note as well without just being all fully produced. So
yeah, it made it really memorable. It made the ending of the record really memorable, like a very obvious ending point. Yeah.
Cool.
That's very
I'm very proud of that album. I definitely worked hard, right? It took me a good year and a half to record the whole thing to make sure it was proper.
Yeah.
Right. If you come to this session, not the session, but the DAW session I have of some of those songs, you'd see that some of the takes I was at like take 150 just to try to figure out, right? Because I would just jam and I would pick the little sections that I like and piece it together. And I was like, okay, now I got to learn this because this is not a thing that I did. It was just little pieces of licks that I kind of liked. And then I pieced them together and then learned the whole thing and re-record the whole thing.
Okay, so that's cool.
That's how I did it.
That's cool. Now, with that is most of that record what they call chicken picking?
Chicken picking, yeah.
Do you mind explaining that? Do you mind explaining that
so
to the
chicken,
listener?
Yeah, chicken picking is kind of like a hybrid picking. So you pluck. That's why they say that, because you have a plucking sound. So it's basically using a pick. So the way I would do it, I use a pick and fingers. So you can pick the thing and then pluck the finger under. So it's a plucking. I'll just show you exactly what I mean. It'll be a lot easier, even if it's a podcast. But if you do a note and then pluck the other one, as in, let's say, that kind of thing. Now, I wasn't really playing anything memorable there, but it's a technique. So you basically pick and do the plucking thing, and then you can also do what they call triplets. So it goes so it's like a plucking sound as well. So that's kind of like what the style it is itself. But yeah, you can do it with the pick itself, though. I've like Albert Lee. He's a well-known guitar player that played with everybody, Eric Clapton, Emmylou Harris back in the day. He doesn't use fingers. He uses pick only, but he does a lot of the flat picking, up and down, like hybrid picking type of thing as well. Not hybrid, but flat picking. So you can still get that twanginess with that. But I would say if you want to get that kind of like plucking a lot more, you definitely pluck the string with one finger or 2 fingers, whatever you want to do.
Interesting.
So that's the style itself, yeah, and it just gives you that kind of sound. So yeah.
Would that be carried over from banjo playing? Is that kind of like what's the right word?
No, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure who started the whole thing. I would assume Elvis's guitar player, and I'm trying to think of his name. I can't remember his name to save my life, but he was one of the guys that had the Tele. He was one of the first guys. So he had a little bit of that plucking sound. And then I think Jerry Reid was probably the guy that brought it in. Again, I might be wrong on this, so don't quote me on this. But I remember him being one of the guys that definitely did a lot of that plucking sound. And then it got popular and everybody started copying that. And then my favorite player growing up was Brent Mason. He was the guy in Nashville. So I would open every album, Brooks and Dunn, Alan Jackson, and all these guys had the same guy, Brent Mason. I was like, wow, this guy's insane. Like, he plays on everything. And when I was in Nashville, I got to assist one of his sessions. So, cool. So I remember someone calling one of the engineers like, hey, Mason's in the studio. I am on my way. So I went and checked him out, and it was absolutely insane. Now, maybe it was a bad day. It wasn't very nice that day, but maybe he had a bad day. But point being is still watching him play, I was just blown away. I was like, this is insane. And I got to see 2 of my favorite guys do that in a session. The other guy was John Jorgensen of the Telecasters. Okay. Or he was with what was that band called? It was a country band. I can't remember the band. Oh, Desert Rose Band. That was the big thing as well. So he brought like the amps back. He would plug into a AC 30 amp, I believe it was called, and it had that kind of like high glossy sound, but he brought that chicken picking thing to it as well. Anyways, but I got to meet him in the studio, and I remember getting into the studio because they didn't tell me he was in the studio. They just said, Ivan, you need to come to the studio. I was like, why? Just come on, you'll see what happens. I was like, okay. So I walk into the studio, and like I said, he's one of my favorite because he plays in the Telecasters. I don't know if you know who the Telecasters are.
No, I don't.
They're 3 guitar players that play out of their minds, and they do these solo things, and they're called the Telecasters. And he's one of the members. So I knew him. So obviously when I went, I got into the studio and I got face to face with him. That's the first guy I got to see in the studio. And I was like, this is John Jorgensen in my head, right? I was like, I don't even know what to say, right? And he just said, hey, son. I was like, hey. He's like, are you Yvan? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, well, nice to meet you. And he's like, well, come in. We're just doing some tracking. I was like, okay. So I sat down a little bit, and he's like, do you want to see my guitars? I was like, yeah, I wouldn't mind. Right? I'm so shy at that point. I was like, I can't believe this is John Jorgensen, man. Yeah. My idol, basically. So that happened a lot, actually, because we did the tour with Brad Paisley as well.
Yeah.
With Johnny. Okay. And so Brad Paisley, again, one of my idols. So I got to ask him questions, I was like, hey, Brad, how do you do this in your song? And he'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll show you. And I was like, this is surreal, man. I'm talking to Brad Paisley and he showed me the lick off of his song. So yeah, I got pretty lucky with that. I got to tell you, all these kind of things that I got to do and the players that I got to meet was pretty surreal for me.
Yeah, so. That's exciting. That's really exciting. That's cool. Thanks for answering all those questions. That's really interesting. Maybe we could finish the chat talking a little bit. Like I mentioned, I'm in New Brunswick, a bilingual province. Yep. So I have another job with Music New Brunswick. So I interact with the Francophone scene, the Acadian scene, and the Anglophone scene. I just wouldn't mind your opinion or your thoughts on the way the Francophone scene kind of sits in Canada, or kind of sits where you're from in Ottawa, and how it's influenced or affected your career overall.
Well, the way I got into, first of all, it was one of my buddies, Danny Loyer, that was a steel guitar player I told you about that I met at that school, but he became a good friend of mine, and now he's the guy that I use. He lives in Rockland, which is about 15 minutes away from where I am. So when I need a steel player, he comes in here, and he's in the back right there, and he just does his steel stuff. And we were working on one of my album, which was a French album. Now, I had no intentions of taking it out or anything. It was just a project for myself because I thought, well, I grew up with all these songs and I want to redo them my way. I was like, some of them are not country, but I'll redo them my way, but they're all French. So I hired my buddy Dan to come in. So he's sitting in the back and he's doing the thing. And then he's like, hey, Yvan, can I ask you a question? I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you doing with this album? I was like, well, Dan, is just for my own. I was like, for my family, there's a few songs it was my grandmother's favorite song growing up. And I wanted to hear it in the context of a full band thing. So I wanted to record this whole thing and I needed more than one song. So I did 10 songs that I grew up with. So he's like, dude, have you ever thought of going on the French market? I was like, not really. I was like, well, I'm pretty busy with Johnny. And I was like, first of all, first question I asked him was like, well, is there any money to be made there? Right? I was like, well, why would I do that? He's like, dude, first of all, you are French. He's like, just the fact that you're French, you're going to be supported right away. He's like, no matter who you are, no matter how you sing, and he's like, you're still going to have your spot on the Quebec side. I was like, really? He's like, plus they pay well. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, they actually pay very well because, again, they want to keep the Francophone. Obviously, they want to keep their own together, right? They don't want to lose all their, and no offense to the English, but he's like, they don't want to lose them to all the English side, so that the singers decide, I'll just go sing in English because there's more opportunities for them. He's like, we want to make sure that we still have a good crop of artists on the Quebec side. So he's like, yeah, they take care of each other. So I was like, that's interesting. Okay. So I was like, well, maybe I'll think about that and maybe I'll get myself on the Quebec side at some point. Now, I was also very shy. So in my head, I was like, I don't know if I can do that, right? To go on a microphone and talk. I was never able to do that. So one of my buddies suggested, he's like, hey, you should do what I did. He's like, I had to do a lot of presentations for my company and I was never able to do that. He's like, I went to see somebody for that. And I was like, really? There's people that can help you with that? He's like, yes. So long story short, I went to see him. He de-blocked me in the sense that I'm able to talk on a mic. So that's a long story short. But anyways, then I get a call from one of my other buddies. He's like, hey, I host this festival in Quebec. He's like, I had a cancellation. Would you be interested in coming singing at my festival? And I was like, whoa, that just fell on my lap. I was like, what is up with that? So that was like a godsend to me. I was like, okay, it fell on my lap. I need to take this because obviously this is what my buddies have been suggesting to me, that I do those festival. So I took the festival, and I was a little nervous because I was like, am I able to get to the mic and actually, entertain and not just sing my song? And I saw that I was able to do that. Like, he really helped me out to be able to just talk on the mic. So anyways, that was the very first festival I took. And from there on, the word started to spread around, and people started calling me, saying, hey, I heard you're a singer. We need some entertainment, so for some of our festivals. So would you be interested? So I started doing a few of those, and then COVID happened, and that kind of took a little bit of a nosedive to that. But at the same time, it actually helped me way more than I thought, because I started doing the lives on Facebook.
Okay.
And the live on Facebook, I used to have, and it's not to try to be full of myself, but I did have about 600-700 people watching every week, right? And then the live would get to like 20, 30, 40,000 views. So I was like, well, that's a lot of people. Well, that helped me a lot, because most of the people that were calling were like, hey, I saw you on the live Facebook. Can you come and do a festival for us? So now this year I believe it's 16 festivals I think I have this year in Quebec. But in Quebec itself, I believe there's about, between 200 and 300 country music festival just in the Quebec side. So that's why my buddy was like, if you can get 20, 30 festivals a year, you got it made, buddy. Mm-hmm. I was like, true enough. Like, plus they pay well. So he's like, you should be able to do well. And they still buy CDs on top of that. Okay. They are not the generation, because most of these people that follow those festivals, they definitely are more on the older side with an RV, and they do all the festival and they buy the CDs. They want physical copies of CDs. So one of them last year, one of the festivals, I sold $1,500 of CDs in that one little festival. So
nice.
So my point being is there's some good money to be made on the Quebec side. And like I said, they definitely want to support their own. So there's definitely a big opening, let's say, for artists, if you're a French artist, to go and do these festivals, because they really, really need some entertainment. They really do. Because they got a crops of older people. They need some younger crop to start taking over from the older generation. Okay. Right. So you can tell that they're missing a lot. And just as far as like, I won't specify the price, but I was making the same as I was making on the other side, playing the big shows, and I was only doing the small festivals. I was like, wow, that's the same kind of money I'm doing already. Okay. So like I said, they really want to take care of their own on the French side. So, which is a good thing. The Quebec or the English side does exactly the same, right? So it's nice to see that the Quebec side, being a smaller industry, are still trying to do the same thing and trying to make sure that they accommodate the French people. So it's kind of nice. It's been nice for that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And like I learned that through Music New Brunswick here, the Francophone scene here in New Brunswick, where folks would travel to Quebec for shows. And I lived briefly in Montreal for a few years, and it was really interesting learning about the Quebec scene, how it was self-contained, and how they really, like what you said, they took care of each other.
They really do.
Yeah.
That's been fun.
And tons of good music. I often wondered if the Francophone scene, and I don't know if I'm just seeing this from an Anglophone side of things, but some of the Francophone music I come across is so interesting and different than what I'm used to, even if it's a pop song or even if it's like a radio rock song, that I kind of wonder if they feel less pressure to explode in the English territory, so they're kind of like more free to be artistic or something.
I was just about to say that it seems like you're a little more free artistic wise. Yes, completely. Because there's a lot of things I'm like, oh, that's on the radio. And it's not to be mean, but a lot of times I will say that to myself. I'm like, wow, this is an interesting subject, or the way they wrote this song, right? Yeah. But it fits, and it has its place on radio. So you're right in that aspect, that the English side seems to be a little more polished. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but more polished as in like it needs to fit the criteria. And then maybe it'll pass on the radio. On the Quebec side, it's a little more loosey-goosey.
Loosey-goosey. Well, you mentioned Angine the Poitrine earlier, and I know I can't remember the name of the organization, or they kind of came out of this like creative. I can't think of the word, but it's not a school, but it's like they came out of this creative place in the small town they're in, Sangway or. Saguenay. Yeah. And like, I don't think that band could have come out of anywhere else but Quebec.
No, exactly. Exactly. And have you heard the interview about them? Like they had an interview and they were talking to how this was a whole joke in the sense it's because they had two bands or two acts. They would do another thing, but by themselves without suits. And then they're like, well, the other act, they'll know it's us. Let's put suits on just so they don't know it's us at first. So that was kind of a joke thing. And then it caught on. So they were like, now we're stuck. We need to put the suits on. He's like, so the first thing we need to do is put the suits in our suitcase. So he's like, you open my suitcase, it's the whole suit and a few shirts. Yeah. Like, that's it. He's like, we need to make sure those suits are there. And he's like, it's interesting too. He's like, because we have to rehearse without the suits first to create those songs, but it's like it's a whole process to put the suits and rehearse with the suits. He's like, because I can't see much. He's like, I have little holes when I'm playing drums, but he's like, it's still very hard to see what his other buddy is doing, and then the pedal work that he has to do with the mask. And so he was explaining that. I thought it was a very interesting interview. I really liked it. It was wow, just two normal guys, and you know, just experimenting with the music, and they're very good musicians
for sure.
Like when you listen to that stuff, it's like wow. Like the just looping by itself is a hard thing. Looping with a drummer, then the drummer being on top of it and not being on both sides and locking it in. I don't know how they do it. Well, I know how they do it, but the point is it's very hard what they're doing. So power to them, man. They're very, very good musicians.
Yeah, it's incredible. I just happened, my buddy sent me a video of theirs like months and months ago before they kind of exploded. And you're right, they do have another band where they're two brothers, and you can find the footage out there on YouTube where they're not in costumes and they're playing. It's a little heavier. It's a little more heavy metal. I didn't see the other ones. I don't even know what they go by. I can't remember it, but I know you can tell it's them because they just have the same, they're just moving the same way.
The way, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can tell it's them.
The drummer has a very, like, the way he plays, it's very distinctive. Because most drummers are very, not loud in the sense of volume wise, but loud the way they play. And he's very, like it's very distinctive. Like I said, and I'm sure if I'd see him without a costume play, I would know it's him just by the drumming. Yeah,
absolutely. You'd recognize it right away. I sent it to my buddy who sent me that. I was like, hey, this has got to be their other band. Like this has to be them. It's definitely them.
Interesting.
And if I can email you the link if you want. Please do. Have it saved somewhere for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I watch them not every day, but there's, I see a video. I'm like, oh, I want to see about this. So.
It's fun when a band like that takes off. Like, how does that get? That's another good motivator. It's like if a band like this can find success, then sometimes you just got to just follow your heart. Just do what you think is cool.
Absolutely, because I'm sure they never thought it would do that, especially with the microtonal music as well, which is not something that's very common nowadays. So. No. It's very interesting.
You could never play.
Power to them, man. I'm happy something like that has happened just because, always the same crop or the same, not the crop, what's the word I'm looking for? The same stencil that you use every time, in music. That's not the right word. I'm talking about. The same mold.
Yeah.
Now it's a different mold, something completely different with different music, different sounds because of the microtonal thing. It's so cool. Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Yvan, I appreciate you giving me so much of your time. It's been well over an hour, and we could probably keep talking, but I actually have a show. I got to get ready. I got to get ready to go live.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
No worries.
Wow, that's really. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Where should folks go to check you out? I know you have a website, but you're on streaming too. But do you prefer to direct people to a certain location?
All my social media stuff. I mean, as far as all social media, it would just be YouTube, I guess, and Facebook are the two that I use the most. So Facebook, definitely. I do less these days just because I'm a little more busy, but I want to start back doing even lives back on Facebook. So here and there, do an hour live of just some songs here and there. So that one is just under my name, Yvan Petit, YVANPETIT, or my website is Yvan Petit Music. So all one word. So www.yvanpetitmusic.com.
Okay, and the two newest songs you have out, the French language songs, is that part of a bigger album that's on its way?
Yes, as far as all the other songs, I haven't finished all the other songs. They're close to being finished, but some of them missing keys and backup singing, some harmonies. Other than that, they're pretty much done. So I'm just waiting for a little bit of more cash flow because it's definitely expensive to do albums. And then I'll release the album as is and 10 tracks, and we'll go from there. So I wanted to make sure that I had a few singles first to kind of get the word out there, and then go to there. Yeah, from there, I should say.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. And again, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it as well. And hopefully we'll do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
Sounds good.